Hello, I'm Jonathan Charnes. Thank you for watching the Dysfunctional FAA Part 5. The first thing we're going to discuss is the dual mandate of the FAA. Until 1996, they were mandated to regulate air commerce for safety and promoting its development. Clear conflict of interest. They changed it a little bit. So in 1996, it was to ensure safety and efficiency of air travel. So it gives an inspector an excuse to overlook an airline's failure to comply with the regulations because the airline's trying to make a profit, basically. I'm also told many inspectors hope to get jobs with the air carriers as executives making six-figure salaries upon retirement to the FAA. Take early retirement from the FAA and have basically do-nothing jobs with the air carrier. That's what I was told. It'd be interesting to find out what percent of FAA inspectors do wind up working for the air carriers eventually. Just as mechanics and pilots check the aircraft before flight to make sure it's functioning properly and safely, in my opinion, they also need to check the pilot's mental health to make sure that he is fit and doesn't have any psychological problems that'll prevent him from performing his duties as pilot while he's flying the airplane. This should be done by a psychologist with a polygraph machine. And I'm sure they can detect many pilots that have mental problems like this, that are suicidal, that are under the influence of controlled substances, that lack proper amount of rest, they're unduly fatigued. This should be done, in my opinion, worldwide before every flight. One psychological problem a pilot can have is fixating on a particular problem. This happened twice and caused fatal accidents, in my opinion. One was Eastern Airlines. This was maybe 45 years ago. The pilots were fixating on a landing gear problem. And while the plane was on autopilot, apparently one of them bumped a switch and got it disconnected, and it lost the altitude hold and slowly descended. And after a while, they flew into a swamp in Florida. Another instance was with the United flight. They also had a landing gear problem, and pilot captain was again fixating on the landing gear. He was kind of paranoid about landing without gear, and they basically tried to solve that gear problem by circling near the airport until they ran out of fuel. And then they wound up gliding into some trees, I believe, in a forest, and killing quite a few people in the process. Sometimes anger can affect the pilot's judgment. In 1989, I was jump seating on a Midway airline flight from Chicago to New York, and it's common to introduce yourself to the captain and let him know that you want a jump seat. You got to get his permission. The only trouble was that was a union carrier, and Eastern pilots like me were breaking the strike, and the captain was busy lecturing to two other Eastern pilots about how bad they were being strike breakers. Very upset, giving him his peace of mind, and just ranting and raving and delaying the flight, actually doing that. The flight attendant just told me to go in back, have a seat, and I did. And unfortunately, my two colleagues were kicked off the flight. But that anger was destroying his situational awareness. Another psychological problem is a superiority complex. One of my captains thought he's always right, likes to put everybody down, like the first officer. It's basically gear up and shut up. And one day we were told by air traffic control to descend to 200 feet, something like that. And the captain doesn't do it. And I tell him that, hey, look, we're supposed to descend according to air traffic control. And rather than double checking, he just refuses to do that and continues holding his altitude. And then we're called out by air traffic control asking why we didn't descend. So you have to have an open mind. You can't let a sense of superiority dictate what you're doing. In my opinion, there's a lot of incompetent diversity, equity, inclusion bureaucrats in the FAA. It appears that one of them approved a material called MPEL to be used in the MD-11. It's an insulator that they put over electrical wires. The only thing is, the material is known to be highly flammable. Yet, they approved that, and Swiss Air Flight 111 caught fire because of this insulation igniting, probably from electrical sparks from the wires that it covered. Occasionally electrical wires can spark if their insulations get a little bad, and killed everybody on board. Well, there's a lot of good inspectors that are true professionals in the FAA. They're a credit to the FAA. They promote safety. There are a lot of others that are as useless as tits on a bowl. They're like Sergeant Schultz in the Hogan's Heroes series back in the 60s. He'd always say, I see nothing, I see nothing, when the prisoners were doing all sorts of mischievous things. Anyway, I'll give you one example who I consider to be Sergeant Schultz. I have a plane, and I bought it, and it turned out that there's an airworthiness directive that requires the seat tracks to be checked. If the seat tracks are worn too much, the seat can slide backwards, and now the pilot will slide away from his controls, especially the rudder pedals. Now, if you're tall like me, it doesn't matter too much, because if it goes back all the way, I still can reach the pedals. But if somebody's shorter, now they can lose control of the airplane, because the seat will go back on takeoff, because the nose is raised. You're at about maybe a 10-degree angle, and that's enough to make the seats go back if the track's worn out. Now, this directive is clear. Every annual inspection, it's supposed to be inspected and complied with. Well, the records show that for 3 years in a row, this one repair shop failed to perform this directive by inspecting the seat track. I contact the FAA on this, and the inspector in charge of monitoring this shop says nothing was wrong. Wouldn't even write them up with a letter of reprimand. So it's a sad state. Well, anyway, I hope you contact your congressman and try to get them to increase the number of FAA inspectors and have everybody in the industry subject to a routine polygraph test, and also make all maintenance records public so the public can get an idea of who's actually complying with maintenance. You don't have to be an aeronautical engineer to figure out if maintenance entries are bogus. If you see the constant repeat failure of a certain item by one carrier, like a generator failing 8 times in a row on 8 consistent flights, do you really want to be flying with them? Thank you. Bye.